Boy tried to steal a biker's wallet. What the biker did next melted hearts. The autumn wind swept through the narrow streets of Detroit's east side, carrying with it the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. Fallen leaves skittered across cracked sidewalks, gathering in corners where abandoned buildings stood like silent witnesses to better days. The sun hung low in the October sky, casting long shadows that made the neighborhood feel even more desolate than usual. Marcus Chen, a 42-year-old veteran and motorcycle mechanic, pulled his Harley-Davidson into the parking lot of Joe's Corner Store, a small family-owned shop that had been serving the community for 3 decades. The rumble of his engine echoed off the brick walls before dying to silence as he killed the ignition. Marcus dismounted, his leather jacket creaking as he stretched his back, feeling the familiar ache from an old injury sustained during his service in Afghanistan. He was an imposing figure at 6'2", with broad shoulders and arms marked by tattoos that told stories of brotherhood, loss, and survival. His beard was neatly trimmed, streaked with grey, and his dark eyes held a weariness that came from seeing too much of the world's harsh realities. Despite his intimidating appearance, those who knew Marcus understood he had a heart as vast as the open roads he loved to travel. The interior of Joe's Corner Store was warm and welcoming, a stark contrast to the cold outside. The bell above the door chimed as Marcus entered, and Joe himself, a portly man in his 60s with kind eyes and thinning hair, looked up from behind the counter with a broad smile. "Marcus, good to see you, my friend," Joe called out, his voice carrying the slight accent of his Greek heritage. "The usual?" "You know it, Joe," Marcus replied, his voice deep and gravelly. He made his way down the narrow aisles, grabbing a bottle of water and a turkey sandwich from the refrigerated section. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and a radio in the corner played classic rock at a low volume. As Marcus approached the counter to pay, he noticed Joe's expression shift, his eyes focusing on something beyond the window. Following his gaze, Marcus saw a young boy hovering near his motorcycle. The kid couldn't have been more than 13 or 14, wearing a threadbare hoodie several sizes too large and jeans with holes at the knees that weren't there for fashion. The boy was rail-thin, his face gaunt with prominent cheekbones that spoke of missed meals. His skin was pale, and even from inside the store, Marcus could see the way his hands trembled slightly. The kid kept glancing around nervously, his body language screaming desperation and fear. "That boy's been hanging around here for a couple days now," Joe said quietly, concern evident in his tone. "I think he's homeless. I caught him trying to pocket a candy bar yesterday, but I let it slide. Gave him a sandwich instead." Marcus watched as the boy edged closer to his motorcycle, his movements furtive and anxious. The kid's eyes were fixed on the leather saddlebag, where Marcus kept his wallet when riding. It was a rookie mistake, one Marcus rarely made, but today he'd been distracted, thinking about an upcoming meeting with his veterans support group. "He's going for my bike," Marcus said, not with anger, but with a strange mixture of curiosity and something that might have been recognition. He'd seen that look before, the look of someone backed into a corner with no way out. "Want me to call the cops?" Joe asked, reaching for the phone beneath the counter. Marcus held up a hand. "No. Let me handle this." The biker paid for his items quickly, his eyes never leaving the boy through the window. As he pushed open the door, the bell chiming once more, he saw the kid's hand dart into the saddlebag with practiced speed. The boy's fingers closed around the worn leather wallet, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. Then their eyes met. The boy's face went white, terror flooding his features. He was caught, exposed, and trapped. Marcus could see the kid's mind racing, calculating whether to run or to fight or to beg. The wallet trembled in his thin hand. Marcus walked slowly toward his motorcycle, his boots heavy on the pavement. He didn't rush or shout. He simply approached with the steady, measured pace of someone who'd been in far more dangerous situations than this. "That's mine," Marcus said simply, his voice calm. The boy's eyes darted left and right, looking for escape routes. His breathing came in short, panicked gasps. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice cracking. It was a young voice, still caught between childhood and adolescence. I wasn't." "Yes, you were," Marcus interrupted, but there was no harshness in his tone. "You were stealing my wallet. The question is why?" The boy's face crumbled. Tears welled up in his eyes and his whole body began to shake. He thrust the wallet toward Marcus, holding it out like it was burning his hands. "Please, I'm sorry. Please don't call the cops. Please." Marcus took the wallet, noting how light it was in his hand. He opened it slowly, deliberately, checking the contents. His driver's license, a few credit cards, a photo of his late wife, and $43 in cash. Everything was there. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. The boy wiped at his eyes with the sleeve of his hoodie, leaving a dark streak across the faded grey fabric. "Ethan," he whispered. "Ethan Brooks." "Ethan," Marcus repeated, letting the name settle between them. "How old are you?" 14. The boy's voice was barely audible. "When's the last time you ate?" The question seemed to catch Ethan off guard. He blinked, confusion replacing some of the fear in his eyes. Yesterday morning, I think. Some fries someone threw away outside a McDonald's." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd known hunger during his early days in the foster care system, before the Marines had given him structure and purpose. He remembered what it felt like to be invisible, desperate, and alone. "Where are your parents, Ethan?" The boy's face hardened, and for a moment Marcus saw a flash of the man he might become, if he survived long enough. "Mom's dead. Overdosed 2 years ago. Dad," Ethan's voice broke. "Dad's somewhere. He took off when I was 11. I was in foster care for a while, but I ran. The guy they put me with..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. He'd heard too many similar stories. The afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold and orange, making the scene feel almost surreal. Traffic hummed in the distance, and somewhere a dog barked. Life continued around them, indifferent to this moment that felt suspended in time. Marcus looked at this skinny kid with the hollow eyes and trembling hands, and he made a decision that would change both their lives. "You hungry right now?" he asked. Ethan's eyes widened. "What?" "It's a simple question. Are you hungry?" Yes," Ethan admitted, his voice small and uncertain. Marcus gestured toward the diner across the street, a place called Ruby's that had been serving the neighborhood since the 1950s. Its neon sign flickered in the fading daylight, promising hot food and warm booths. "Come on then, let's get you something to eat." Ethan stared at him like he'd suggested they fly to the moon. You're not calling the cops?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "But we're going to talk, really talk. And you're going to tell me the truth about everything. Deal?" The boy hesitated, suspicion and hope warring on his face. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Deal." They crossed the street together, an unlikely pair, the burly biker with his leather and tattoos, and the fragile boy drowning in his oversized hoodie. Inside Ruby's, the warmth enveloped them like a blanket. The smell of coffee, bacon, and fresh bread made Ethan's stomach growl audibly. Ruby herself, a sturdy woman in her 50s with graying auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun, looked up from the counter. She'd known Marcus for years, had fed him through some of his darkest days after his wife's death from cancer 3 years ago. "Marcus," she called out warmly, then her eyes landed on Ethan, and her expression softened with understanding. "Booth or counter?" "Booth," Marcus replied. "And Ruby, this one's really hungry." She nodded, already reaching for menus. "Say no more, honey." They settled into a corner booth, its red vinyl seats cracked but clean. Ethan sat stiffly, like he might bolt at any moment. Marcus slid the menu across the table. "Order whatever you want," he said. "I mean it. Whatever you want." Ethan's hands shook as he picked up the menu. His eyes scanned the options, and Marcus watched as tears began to stream down the boy's thin face. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears that spoke of overwhelming emotion too big to contain. "Why are you being nice to me?" Ethan asked, his voice breaking. "I tried to rob you." Marcus leaned back, considering his answer carefully. Through the window, he could see the sun continuing its descent, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and purple. The world outside looked almost beautiful, which seemed at odds with the reality they were living. "Because once upon a time, I was you," Marcus said finally. "Different circumstances, maybe, but the same desperation, same hunger, same fear. And someone gave me a chance when they didn't have to. Someone saw past the surface to the person underneath." He paused, his dark eyes holding Ethan's gaze. "I'm not going to lie to you, kid. You're in a bad spot. But bad spots don't have to be permanent." Ruby approached with her notepad, her reading glasses perched on her nose. "What can I get you boys?" Ethan looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. The boy's voice was hesitant. Can I have a cheeseburger? With fries? And maybe a chocolate shake?" "You absolutely can," Ruby said warmly. "How about we make that a double cheeseburger? You look like you could use it." Ethan nodded, fresh tears spilling over. "I'll have the usual," Marcus added. "And Ruby, bring him some bread while we wait." "Already on it, sweetheart," she replied, squeezing Marcus's shoulder as she passed. When they were alone again, Marcus pulled out his wallet, the same wallet Ethan had tried to steal less than 15 minutes ago. He removed the $43 and set it on the table between them. "This is what you would have gotten if you'd succeeded," he said. $43. How long would that have lasted you?" Ethan stared at the money. "Maybe a week, if I was careful. And then what?" "I don't know." The boy's voice was hollow. "Try again somewhere else, I guess." Or, he didn't finish, but the implication hung heavy in the air. There were worse things than petty theft, darker paths that desperate kids could take. Ruby returned with a basket of warm bread and butter, along with Ethan's chocolate shake. The boy fell on the food like he was starving, which Marcus realized he was. He watched Ethan eat with a mixture of sadness and determination forming in his mind. "Tell me about your life," Marcus said gently. "The real story, not the version you tell social workers or cops. The truth." Between bites of bread, Ethan began to talk. The story that emerged was heartbreaking in its mundane tragedy. A mother who'd struggled with addiction for years, trying her best but ultimately losing the battle. A father who couldn't handle the pressure and simply left one morning, never to return. A brief stint in foster care that ended badly, with Ethan sleeping in a car until he ran away. 3 months on the streets, moving from place to place, staying ahead of authorities and predators alike. "I sleep in different spots," Ethan explained, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "Sometimes in abandoned buildings, sometimes in alleys behind restaurants where the dumpsters are. There's this old factory on the east side where a few of us crash sometimes. It's not safe, but it's better than nothing." "School?" Marcus asked. Ethan shook his head. "Couldn't keep going. They ask too many questions when you don't have an address, and I couldn't focus anyway. Too tired, too hungry." Ruby brought their food, and Marcus watched as Ethan's eyes widened at the sight of the massive double cheeseburger, golden fries piled high, and a side of coleslaw. The boy looked at Marcus, something like gratitude and disbelief mixed in his expression. "Thank you," Ethan whispered. "Thank you so much." "Eat," Marcus said simply. As Ethan devoured his meal, Marcus found himself thinking about paths not taken, about choices and consequences, about the thin line between survival and destruction. He thought about his own past, the foster homes, the anger, the military recruiter who'd seen potential where others saw only trouble. He thought about Sarah, his late wife, who taught him that strength came in many forms and that the bravest thing you could do was care about someone when it would be easier not to. When Ethan finally slowed down, his plate nearly clean, Marcus leaned forward. "I'm going to make you an offer," he said, "and I want you to think carefully before you answer." Ethan set down his burger, wariness returning to his eyes. "What kind of offer?" "The kind that could change your life, but it requires something from you. It requires honesty, effort, and trust. Can you do that? The boy nodded slowly, though uncertainty clouded his features. I own a motorcycle repair shop on the west side, Marcus continued. Been running it for 8 years. It's not fancy, but it's honest work and it keeps me busy. I also volunteer with a veterans group that helps at-risk youth. We've got connections. Social workers who actually care, lawyers who'll work pro bono, people who know how to navigate the system. I don't want to go back into the system, Ethan interrupted, fear creeping into his voice. I can't. I'm not talking about throwing you back into foster care, Marcus said firmly. I'm talking about doing this right, legal, safe. I have a spare room in my house. It's been empty since my wife passed. You could stay there, temporarily, while we figure out your situation. Get you enrolled in school, get you some proper meals and clothes. In return, you help out at the shop. Learn a trade, learn some discipline, learn that there's a different way to live than what you've been doing. Ethan stared at him, mouth slightly open. You don't even know me. No, Marcus agreed, but I know desperation when I see it, and I know talent. You got into my saddlebag so smoothly, I almost didn't catch it. That takes skill and nerve. Imagine what you could do if you channeled that into something legal and productive. Why would you do this? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. People don't just help. Not for nothing. Marcus was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Outside, streetlights were beginning to flicker on, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The diner was filling up with the dinner crowd, workers ending their shifts, families grabbing a quick meal, regulars finding comfort in familiar surroundings. When I came back from Afghanistan, Marcus began, his voice low and measured, I was a mess. PTSD, anger issues, nightmares every night. My wife stood by me, but it was hard, really hard. There was this guy at the VA, a counselor named James. He didn't have to care about me. I was just another damaged vet in a system full of them. But he did care. He checked on me. He called when I missed appointments. He introduced me to the motorcycle club that ultimately saved my life. And when I asked him why he bothered, you know what he said? Ethan shook his head. He said, because somebody bothered for me once, and now it's my turn to pass it on. That stuck with me. This world has enough people walking by and not seeing, enough people who close their eyes to suffering because it's easier than getting involved. I don't want to be that person. Not anymore. The sincerity in Marcus's voice seemed to penetrate Ethan's defenses. The boy's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they seemed different, less desperate, more hopeful. What if I mess up? Ethan asked. What if I'm not good enough? Then we deal with it, Marcus said simply. This isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. It's about showing up every day and doing your best. Some days that best will be better than others, and that's okay. The point is, you keep showing up. Ruby approached with a slice of apple pie, setting it in front of Ethan without a word. She winked at Marcus and moved on to the next table. Ethan looked down at the pie, then up at Marcus. Can I think about it? Your offer, I mean? Of course, Marcus replied. But here's the thing, Ethan. Winter's coming. Detroit winters are brutal, especially for someone living on the streets. You might not have as much time as you think. The boy nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. Every day he stayed out there was a day he might not survive. Every night in the cold was a risk. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, the warmth of the diner a cocoon against the harsh world outside. When the check came, Marcus paid without hesitation. As they stood to leave, Ethan seemed taller somehow, less hunched and defeated. On the sidewalk outside Ruby's, Marcus pulled a business card from his wallet, the same wallet that had started this entire encounter. He handed it to Ethan. This has my cell number and the address of my shop, he said. You don't have to decide right now. Take tonight. Think about it. But Ethan, whatever you decide, I want you to keep that card. If you're ever in real trouble, if you need help, you call me. Understand? Ethan clutched the card like a lifeline, nodding vigorously. I understand. "And one more thing," Marcus added, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a $20 bill and pressed it into Ethan's hand. "Get yourself somewhere safe tonight. A motel, a shelter, somewhere warm. Promise me." "I promise," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. They stood there for a moment, two souls connected by chance and circumstance, each seeing something in the other that resonated deep within. Then Marcus clapped Ethan gently on the shoulder. "Be smart, kid. Be safe. And think about what I said." "I will," Ethan promised. "And Marcus, thank you for everything, for not calling the cops, for the food, for seeing me." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You're worth seeing, Ethan. Don't ever forget that." He watched as the boy walked away, the oversized hoodie making him look even smaller against the backdrop of the urban landscape. Ethan turned back once, giving a small wave before disappearing around a corner. Marcus returned to his motorcycle, the evening air cool against his face. He sat on the bike for a long moment, not starting the engine, just thinking. Had he done the right thing? Was he crazy for offering to help a kid who'd tried to rob him? What would Sarah have thought? But deep down, he knew the answer. Sarah would have done the same thing. She'd always seen the best in people, always believed in second chances. It was one of the reasons he'd loved her so completely. As he finally fired up the Harley and pulled out onto the street, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Ethan's face, that mixture of hope and fear, of wanting to believe but being afraid to trust. He understood it completely because he'd worn that same expression once, years ago, when James had first reached out to him. The ride home took him through familiar streets, past the neighborhoods he'd known his whole life. Detroit was a city of contrasts, beautiful architecture standing next to ruins, pockets of revitalization surrounded by decay. It was a city that had been knocked down and was fighting to get back up, not unlike Ethan himself. Marcus's house was a modest two-story in a working-class neighborhood on the west side. The paint could use refreshing and the lawn needed work, but it was solid and warm and his. He parked the Harley in the garage next to his tools and workbenches, the space smelling of oil and metal and hard work. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet, as it had been since Sarah's death. He'd kept her things largely as they were. Her books still lined the shelves. Her favorite mug still sat by the coffee maker. Her presence still echoed in every room. Some people said he should move on, pack things away, make a fresh start. But Marcus wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. He heated up leftover pasta and ate standing at the kitchen counter, his mind still on Ethan. The spare bedroom upstairs had been Sarah's office. After she died, he'd cleared out most of her work stuff, donated her clothes to charity, but left the furniture. The room sat empty now, waiting. Could he really do this? Take in a troubled kid he didn't know? What if Ethan stole from him? What if the boy was involved in worse things than petty theft? What if Marcus wasn't equipped to handle the challenges that would surely come? But then again, what if he didn't try? What if Ethan froze to death this winter? What if the kid fell in with the wrong crowd and ended up dead or in prison? What if Marcus had a chance to make a real difference and he walked away out of fear? He pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. James answered on the second ring. "Marcus, haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing, brother?" "I'm good, James. Listen, I need some advice. I met this kid today." He told the whole story, from the attempted theft to the dinner at Ruby's to the offer he'd made. James listened without interrupting, something Marcus had always appreciated about him. When Marcus finished, there was a long pause. Then James spoke, his voice thoughtful. "You know this won't be easy, right? Kids from that background, they're survivors. They've learned not to trust because trust gets you hurt. He'll test you. He'll push boundaries. He'll probably try to run at least once." "I know," Marcus said, "but you're also uniquely positioned to help him. You've been there, you understand, and you've got the support system he'll need. Our group, Ruby and Joe, the whole community, really. Question is, are you ready for this level of commitment?" Marcus looked around his empty house, at the life he'd been living since Sarah died. going through the motions, working at the shop, attending his support group meetings, riding his bike on weekends. It was a good life, a stable life, but it was also a lonely one. He'd been existing rather than truly living. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think I am. I think I need this as much as he does." James chuckled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Okay, here's what we need to do. First, let's get our legal team involved. If he does accept your offer, we need to do this by the book. Temporary guardianship, proper documentation, the works. I'll start making calls tomorrow. Second, you should set up clear rules and expectations. Structure is crucial for kids like Ethan. And third, be patient with him and with yourself. This is going to be a journey." They talked for another half-hour, James walking Marcus through practical considerations, school enrollment, medical care, counseling services. By the time they hung up, Marcus felt more confident in his decision. He climbed the stairs to the spare bedroom and stood in the doorway. The room had a double bed, a desk, a dresser, and a window that overlooked the backyard. It was simple but comfortable. With some fresh sheets, maybe some posters on the walls, it could become a proper bedroom for a teenage boy. Marcus spent the next hour cleaning the room, dusting surfaces that hadn't been touched in months, opening the window to air it out. He found himself thinking about what Ethan might need: clothes, school supplies, a warm coat for winter, shoes that actually fit. The list grew in his mind, but it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt purposeful. As he finally prepared for bed, Marcus realized he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: anticipation. Not dread or grief or the dull ache of routine, but genuine excitement about what might come next. He didn't know if Ethan would show up at his shop. He didn't know if the boy would accept his help, but he'd made the offer, extended the hand, and that felt right in a way few things had since Sarah's death. Outside, the night deepened over Detroit. In some warm home, families were settling down for the evening. In his modest house, Marcus lay in bed thinking about second chances. And somewhere out in the cold October night, a 14-year-old boy named Ethan Brooks clutched a business card and tried to decide if he could dare to hope. The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when Marcus arrived at his shop, Iron Horse Garage. The building was an old warehouse he'd converted into a motorcycle repair business, with high ceilings, industrial lighting, and more personality than polish. Chrome gleamed on various bikes in different states of repair, tools hung organized on pegboards, and the smell of oil and gasoline was as familiar to him as breathing. He was under the hood of a vintage Indian Chief, elbow-deep in engine work, when the front door opened. Marcus didn't look up immediately, assuming it was his part-time assistant Carlos arriving for his shift. "You're early," he called out, his voice muffled by his position. "Coffee's already made if you want some." It's not Carlos." Marcus froze at the sound of that young, uncertain voice. He pulled himself out from under the bike and turned to see Ethan standing just inside the doorway, looking like he might bolt at any second. The boy was wearing the same oversized hoodie from yesterday, but his face was cleaner, and his hair was wet, like he'd washed in a public bathroom somewhere. "Ethan," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm and even. He grabbed a rag and wiped his hands. "You came." "I thought about what you said," Ethan replied, not moving from his spot by the door. "All night, actually. I didn't sleep much." "Where did you stay?" "There's a YMCA a few blocks from here. I used the money you gave me to get in for a shower and hung out until they closed. Then I slept on a bench in the park across the street. I wanted to be here when you opened." Marcus felt a pang of guilt. Here he'd been sleeping in a comfortable bed while this kid had spent the night on a park bench. "Come in properly. You're making me nervous standing by the door like that." Ethan took a few tentative steps inside, his eyes roaming over the motorcycles, the tools, the organized chaos of a working garage. "This place is amazing," he said, a hint of wonder breaking through his guardedness. "It's home," Marcus said simply. "Well, my second home anyway. I spend more time here than I probably should." He gestured toward a small office area in the back corner. Come on, let's talk. The office was barely more than a desk, a couple of chairs and a filing cabinet, but it was clean and functional. Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee from the ancient machine on his desk, adding plenty of cream and sugar to Ethan's without asking. The boy looked like he could use the calories. They sat across from each other, the desk between them. Marcus waited, letting Ethan take the lead. The boy cradled the warm mug in both hands, staring into it like he might find answers in the dark liquid. "I want to accept your offer," Ethan said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Messing it up, getting attached and then having it taken away, being a burden. Lots of things." Ethan looked up, and Marcus could see the vulnerability in those young eyes. "What if I'm not worth the trouble?" "Hey," Marcus said firmly, leaning forward, "that kind of thinking stops right now. You are worth the trouble. You're worth the effort. You're worth someone giving a damn. Got it?" Ethan nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his features. "Now, I need to be straight with you about what this involves," Marcus continued. "I've got a friend who's a counselor and works with at-risk youth. He's connected with lawyers and social workers we can trust. We're going to do this legally, temporary guardianship to start, with the goal of making it permanent if things work out. That means paperwork, meetings, possibly dealing with Child Protective Services. Think you can handle that? Will they try to send me back to foster care? Not if we do this right. You'll be in my care, in a safe home, enrolled in school. That's what they want, stability for you. My friend James has done this before with other kids. He knows how to navigate the system." Ethan took a sip of coffee, thinking, What about my dad? Legally, I mean. Won't they try to find him?" "Probably," Marcus admitted. "But from what you told me, he abandoned you 3 years ago. That's grounds for termination of parental rights. It'll take time, but it can be done. The question is that what you want?" The boy's face hardened, and Marcus saw that flash of steel again, the core of strength that had kept Ethan alive on the streets. "He left. He doesn't get to suddenly decide he wants to be a father now. I don't want him to have any say in my life." "Fair enough. We'll make sure that's clear from the start." Marcus pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Okay, here's how I see today going. First, we get you some breakfast, real breakfast, not coffee. Then we go to my house so you can see where you'd be staying. After that, we meet with James. He'll want to interview you, make sure you're on board with this, explain the process. Sound good?" "Yeah," Ethan said, a small smile finally breaking through. "That sounds good." They finished their coffee and locked up the shop. As they walked toward Marcus's truck, a well-maintained Ford F-150, Ethan paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Yesterday, when I tried to steal from you, why didn't you just grab me? You could have. You're way bigger than me. Why did you let me take the wallet first?" Marcus considered the question as he unlocked the truck. "Because I wanted to see what you'd do. I wanted to understand who you were. And honestly, I've dealt with enough scared kids to know that sometimes the best way to handle a situation is to let it play out, rather than forcing it." They climbed into the truck, and Marcus started the engine. "Plus, you looked so terrified I figured you'd give it back, and you did." "I thought you were going to kill me," Ethan admitted quietly. "Kill you? Ethan, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a violent man, not anymore. The military taught me plenty about violence, and coming home taught me even more about controlling it. You were never in danger from me." They drove through the waking city, past shops opening for business, past people heading to work, past all the ordinary rhythms of life that had been foreign to Ethan for too long. The breakfast spot Marcus chose was a small diner called Mama's Kitchen, run by a woman named Eleanor, who'd been feeding the neighborhood for 30 years. Eleanor took one look at Ethan and immediately went into maternal overdrive, loading their table with pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast. "You eat," she commanded the boy, her accent carrying hints of her Louisiana roots. "Eat until you can't eat no more." And Ethan did, though with more control than the previous night. He was still hungry, but there was a difference now. He believed there would be more food later. That simple shift in security was profound. Between bites, Ethan asked about the shop, about Marcus's life, about what would be expected of him. Marcus answered honestly, painting neither an overly rosy picture nor a discouraging one. There would be hard work. There would be rules. There would be school and responsibilities and moments of frustration. But there would also be support, stability, and genuine care. "I'm not going to lie to you," Marcus said, pushing his empty plate aside. "I've never done this before. Taken in a kid, I mean. My wife and I wanted children, but it never happened. So I'm probably going to mess up sometimes. I might be too strict or not strict enough. I might not understand what you're going through even when I think I do. But I promise you this. I will always try. I will always show up, and I will never give up on you unless you give me absolutely no choice." "What would make you give up?" Ethan asked, vulnerability creeping back into his voice. "Violence toward others, hard drugs, criminal activity beyond petty stuff. Those are my red lines. Everything else we can work through, but those three things, they're not negotiable. This is a chance to build a different life, not just continue the same patterns in a nicer setting." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I understand, and for what it's worth, I've never done drugs. I've seen what they did to my mom, and I'm not violent. I'm actually kind of a coward." "You're not a coward," Marcus corrected gently. "A coward wouldn't have survived what you've survived. A coward wouldn't have the guts to sit here and accept help. Don't confuse fear with cowardice. Fear is natural. How you deal with it determines whether you're brave or not." After breakfast, they drove to Marcus's house. In daylight, the neighborhood looked different to Ethan, not wealthy, but cared for. People were out mowing lawns, washing cars, chatting over fences. It looked normal. It looked like a place where families lived. Marcus's house was a simple two-story with a small front porch and a detached garage. The paint was fading but clean, the lawn recently mowed, flower beds holding the last blooms of autumn. It was modest but well-maintained, a reflection of its owner. "It's not much," Marcus said as he unlocked the front door, "but it's solid, built in 1972. I've been here for 12 years. Inside, the house was neat and masculine. Lots of wood and leather, framed photographs on the walls, bookshelves full of everything from motorcycle manuals to classic literature. Ethan noticed immediately the presence of a woman in the photos, beautiful, with warm eyes and a bright smile. "That's Sarah," Marcus said, following Ethan's gaze. "My wife. She died 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Ethan said softly. "Me too. She was the best person I've ever known. And she would have loved having you here. She always wanted to help kids who needed it." Marcus showed Ethan around the first floor. Living room, kitchen, dining area, a small bathroom. Everything was clean and organized, lived in, but not cluttered. Then they climbed the stairs. "Master bedroom's there," Marcus said, pointing to one door. "Bathroom's here. And this," he opened another door, "would be your room." Ethan stepped inside and stopped. The room was simple but perfect. A comfortable-looking bed with fresh sheets, a desk by the window, a dresser with a few drawers already open and empty, waiting to be filled. The walls were bare but painted a warm grey. The window overlooked the backyard, where a large oak tree spread its branches. "I cleaned it up last night," Marcus said, a hint of embarrassment in his voice. "Thought if you did come, you'd need a space that was ready. There's not much in the way of decoration, but we can fix that. Make it yours." Ethan walked to the window, looking out at the tree, at the normal backyard of a normal house in a normal neighborhood. His shoulders started to shake, and Marcus realized the boy was crying. Not the desperate sobs of yesterday, but quiet tears of overwhelming relief. "Hey," Marcus said gently, approaching but not touching, respecting Ethan's space. "It's okay." "I've been sleeping in abandoned buildings and alleys for 3 months, Ethan said, his voice thick. "And before that I was bouncing between places that weren't safe. I haven't had my own room since—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Well, you have one now," Marcus said firmly. "This is yours. Your space, your safety. No one's going to take it away from you. They stood there in silence for a moment, Ethan gathering himself, Marcus giving him time. Finally, the boy turned around, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "Thank you," he said simply. "Come on," Marcus replied. "Let's go meet James. He's going to want to talk to you before we get too far down this road." The drive to James's office took them across town to a building that housed a non-profit organization called Second Chance Services. James Turner was waiting in a conference room, a tall black man in his early 50s with kind eyes and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen it all but still believed in people's capacity for change. "You must be Ethan," James said, extending his hand. "Marcus has told me a lot about you." The interview that followed was thorough but not intrusive. James asked about Ethan's history, his experiences in foster care, his time on the streets. He was direct about the challenges ahead and honest about the work it would take, but he was also warm and encouraging, making it clear that he was on Ethan's side. "Here's how this is going to work," James explained, pulling out a folder of documents. "We're going to file for emergency temporary custody for Marcus, based on your status as an unaccompanied homeless minor. That'll give us immediate legal standing. Then we'll start the process for more permanent guardianship. We'll also need to contact Child Protective Services, but given your age and the circumstances, and with Marcus's background and our organization vouching for him, I don't anticipate major problems." "What about school?" Ethan asked. "We'll get you enrolled at Jefferson High. It's in Marcus's district, and they've got good support services for students in transition. You'll probably need some catch-up work given the time you've missed, but they have tutoring programs." James looked at Ethan seriously. "The school part is non-negotiable. Education is your ticket to a better future. Understood?" "Understood," Ethan agreed. "Good. Now Marcus tells me you'll be helping out at his shop. That's excellent, but let's be clear. School comes first. Work comes second. We'll also want you to see a counselor. You've been through trauma, Ethan. There's no shame in getting help to process it." They spent another hour going over details, signing preliminary paperwork, and discussing logistics. By the time they finished, it was early afternoon, and Ethan's head was spinning with information. "You okay?" Marcus asked as they walked back to the truck. "Yeah," Ethan said, though he sounded overwhelmed. "It's just a lot." "It is," Marcus agreed, "but we don't have to do everything at once. Today, let's focus on getting you settled. Tomorrow, we'll start on the next steps. One day at a time, okay?" "One day at a time," Ethan repeated like a mantra. Their next stop was a discount department store where Marcus proceeded to outfit Ethan with basics. Jeans that fit, shirts, underwear, socks, a warm winter coat, proper shoes. Ethan protested at first, uncomfortable with someone spending money on him, but Marcus was firm. "You need these things," he said simply. "Let me help you. That's what this is about, letting people help when you need it." In the clothing section, a moment occurred that would stick with both of them. Ethan held up a hoodie, nice quality, dark blue, and looked at the price tag. $40. He put it back. "You like that one?" Marcus asked. "It's nice, but it's too expensive. I don't need it." Marcus took the hoodie and tossed it in the cart. "If you like it and it fits, we're getting it. You've been making do with scraps for too long. You're allowed to have nice things, Ethan. You're allowed to feel good about how you look." That simple statement seemed to crack something open in Ethan. He'd been living in survival mode for so long that the concept of having preferences, of choosing things because he liked them rather than just because they were free, was foreign. But Marcus was patient, encouraging him to pick what he wanted, to express opinions, to be a normal kid shopping for clothes. By the time they finished, they had bags full of necessities and a few extras. A couple of books Ethan admitted he'd been wanting to read, a decent backpack for school, even a poster of a motorcycle that Ethan had studied longingly in the home goods section. "My mum used to want to ride," Ethan said quietly as they loaded the bags into the truck. "She talked about it sometimes, about getting a motorcycle and just riding somewhere far away where things were better. "Did she ever do it?" Marcus asked. "No, she never got the chance." Ethan's voice carried the weight of all the things his mother never got to do, all the dreams that died with her. "Then maybe someday you'll ride for her," Marcus suggested gently. "Take that trip she never got to take. See those places she wanted to see." The idea seemed to plant itself in Ethan's mind, and Marcus could see him turning it over, considering possibilities that had seemed impossible just 24 hours ago. Back at the house, they spent the afternoon getting Ethan settled in. They hung the motorcycle poster on the wall. They filled the dresser drawers with new clothes, with tags still on them, proof that they belonged to Ethan and no one else. They made up the bed with fresh sheets, and Marcus showed Ethan where the towels were kept, how the shower worked, all the small details of daily life in a functioning household. "I'm going to make dinner," Marcus said. "Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill and some salad. You good with that?" "I'm good with anything," Ethan replied, still seeming slightly dazed by the turn his life had taken. As Marcus worked in the kitchen, he heard the shower running upstairs. He imagined Ethan standing under hot water, really cleaning himself for the first time in months, washing away not just the dirt of the streets, but maybe some of the fear and uncertainty too. When Ethan came downstairs 20 minutes later, his hair damp and combed, wearing clean clothes that actually fit, Marcus was struck by how different he looked. The gaunt desperation was still there. That wouldn't disappear overnight. But there was something else too, a flicker of normalcy, a hint of the kid he should be. They ate dinner on the back porch, the October evening cool but pleasant. Marcus grilled burgers, while Ethan sat in a lawn chair, watching the process with interest. "You ever cook?" Marcus asked. "Not really. Mom tried to teach me some basics, but we didn't have much to work with usually. And on the streets," he shrugged, "no kitchen." "Well, you're going to learn. Everyone should know how to feed themselves. It's a life skill." As darkness fell and they moved inside, Marcus could see Ethan starting to fade. The boy had been running on adrenaline and nerves all day, and exhaustion was catching up with him. "Why don't you get some sleep?" Marcus suggested. "We've got a big day tomorrow. Got to get you enrolled at school, finish up some paperwork with James. You need rest." Ethan nodded, then hesitated at the foot of the stairs. "Marcus, this isn't going to disappear, right? I'm not going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It's real," Marcus assured him. "I promise you, it's real. Your room is upstairs, your clothes are in the dresser. This is your home now, Ethan. For as long as you need it to be." The boy's eyes filled with tears again, but he blinked them away. "Okay. Good night, then." "Good night, kid. Sleep well." Marcus sat in the living room for a long time after Ethan went upstairs, a beer in his hand, thinking about the massive change his life had just undergone. 24 hours ago, he'd been a man living in stasis, going through the motions. Now he had a teenage boy sleeping in his spare room, a boy who was counting on him to not mess this up. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was the most alive he'd felt since Sarah died. Around midnight, he heard footsteps on the stairs. Ethan appeared in the doorway of the living room, looking worried. "Can't sleep?" Marcus asked gently. "I keep waiting for something bad to happen," Ethan admitted, "for someone to come in and say this was all a mistake, for your neighbor to call the cops about a strange kid in your house, for, I don't know, something." "Come here," Marcus said, patting the couch beside him. Ethan sat down, and they sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Listen to me. Bad things have happened to you, a lot of them, and it makes sense that you're waiting for the next shoe to drop. But Ethan, not every moment of your life has to be a crisis. Sometimes things can just be okay, safe, normal." "I don't remember what normal feels like," Ethan said quietly. "Then we'll figure it out together," Marcus replied. "I've got some catching up to do in the normal department myself." They sat there, in the dim light of the living room, an unlikely family taking shape, built not on blood, but on choice. on compassion, on the simple act of one person deciding that another person's life mattered. Finally, Ethan spoke again. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even though we just met, even though I tried to steal from you. Thank you for seeing something worth saving." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "You didn't need saving, Ethan. You needed support. There's a difference. You saved yourself by surviving this long. I'm just helping you build something better than mere survival." Eventually, Ethan's eyelids grew heavy, and Marcus sent him back to bed. This time, the boy went more peacefully, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Alone again, Marcus looked at the photo of Sarah on the mantel. "I hope I'm doing this right," he whispered to her image. "I hope this is what you'd want. I hope I can be what he needs." And though Sarah couldn't answer, Marcus felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he was supposed to be. This was what he was supposed to be doing, not just for Ethan, but for himself too. The house settled into nighttime quiet, the sounds of the city muted beyond its walls. Upstairs, a teenage boy slept in a real bed for the first time in months, secure and safe. Downstairs, a man sat with his memories and his hopes, thinking about tomorrow and all the tomorrows that would follow. The healing had begun for both of them. The real work was just starting. The first light of dawn filtered through Ethan's bedroom window, painting soft shadows across the walls. He'd been awake since 5:30, unable to sleep past his internal alarm, but this morning was different. Instead of the hypervigilance of survival, he felt something closer to nervous anticipation. Today was his first day at Jefferson High. Today, he'd walk through those doors, not as a visitor, but as a student. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Marcus was already in the kitchen when Ethan came downstairs, wearing one of his new shirts and the jeans that actually fit. The smell of coffee and toast filled the air, and Marcus looked up with an encouraging smile. "Ready?" he asked simply. "No," Ethan admitted, "but I'm going anyway." That's the spirit. Real courage isn't not being afraid. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. They ate breakfast together, Marcus keeping up a steady stream of conversation to help distract Ethan from his nerves. He talked about the shop, about a vintage Triumph he'd be working on today, about anything except what Ethan was actually worried about. At 7:30 they climbed into Marcus's truck. The drive to Jefferson took 15 minutes through morning traffic, past shops opening for business and people starting their day. Marcus parked in the visitor lot and turned to Ethan. "Remember, Derek will meet you at the main entrance. Mrs. Owens set that up. He's a good kid. I asked around. Been in the peer mentor program for 2 years. Helps lots of new students adjust. You'll be fine." "Okay," Ethan said, his hand on the door handle but not opening it yet. "Hey," Marcus said gently, "look at me." When Ethan did, Marcus continued, "I'm proud of you for being brave enough to try. Whatever happens today, we'll handle it together. And tonight, we'll make that lasagna you said sounded good. Deal?" "Deal," Ethan agreed, finally opening the door. True to Mrs. Owens's word, Derek Washington was waiting by the main entrance. He was tall and lanky, with a warm smile and an easy demeanor that immediately put Ethan somewhat at ease. Derek wore the school colors, blue and gold, and carried a well-worn backpack covered in band patches. "Ethan?" Derek asked, extending his hand. "I'm Derek. Welcome to Jefferson. Ready for the grand tour?" Marcus watched from the truck as Derek and Ethan disappeared into the building, 2 teenagers navigating a world that Marcus remembered all too well. He said a quick prayer to whatever might be listening, to Sarah maybe, or to the universe in general, that Ethan's day would go smoothly. Then he drove to Iron Horse Garage and threw himself into work, though his mind kept drifting to the kid walking through high school hallways for the first time in months. Inside Jefferson High, Ethan followed Derek through the crowded corridors, overwhelmed by the sheer number of people. Students clustered in groups, chatting and laughing, pulling books from lockers, creating a chaotic symphony of adolescent energy. "It's a lot at first," Derek said, noticing Ethan's wide eyes. "But you get used to it," Here's the key. Stick to your schedule, don't stress about being cool, and if you're ever lost, just ask. Most people here are pretty nice. Derek showed him to his locker, explaining the combination and demonstrating how the sticky lock tended to jam if you didn't pull up on the handle while turning. Then they traced out Ethan's schedule. First period English with Mrs. Patterson, then history with Mr. Chen, followed by math, science, and so on. Mrs. Patterson's awesome, Derek said as they approached the English classroom. She's tough but fair, and she actually makes literature interesting. You read much? Yeah, Ethan said. When I can. I used to hang out at the library a lot. Then you'll like her class. Okay, I'll meet you right here after first period to walk you to history. You've got this. Ethan took a deep breath and entered the classroom. Mrs. Patterson was a woman in her 40s with curly brown hair and an infectious enthusiasm for her subject. She welcomed Ethan warmly, introducing him to the class without making a big deal of it, then seamlessly integrated him into the discussion they were having about To Kill a Mockingbird. To Ethan's surprise, he knew the book, had read it twice during his time living at the library. When Mrs. Patterson asked a question about Atticus Finch's moral courage, Ethan found himself raising his hand before he could talk himself out of it. Yes, Ethan, Mrs. Patterson encouraged. I think Atticus's courage comes from his belief that doing the right thing matters more than being popular or safe. He defends Tom Robinson even though it costs him socially because his conscience won't let him do otherwise. He's showing his kids that integrity means standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The class was silent for a moment. Then Mrs. Patterson beamed. That's an excellent observation, Ethan. Really insightful. Can anyone build on what Ethan just said? The discussion that followed was engaging and thoughtful, and Ethan found himself relaxing slightly. He could do this. He belonged here. Derek was waiting after class, as promised, and they navigated to history together. As the morning progressed, Ethan began to find his rhythm. Some classes were harder than others. Math was definitely going to require those tutoring sessions, but nothing was insurmountable. The teachers were supportive. The other students were mostly indifferent in the way teenagers are, focused on their own lives rather than scrutinizing the new kid. At lunch, Derek invited Ethan to sit with his group, a diverse collection of students who seemed to operate on the social periphery by choice rather than exclusion. There was Maya, who was into theater, Josh, who played guitar in a local band, and Aisha, who was on the debate team. They were welcoming without being overwhelming, asking Ethan questions but not prying when he kept his answers vague. "You settling in okay?" Maya asked, sharing her chips with the table. "Yeah," Ethan said, surprised to realize it was true. "Better than I expected, honestly. Jefferson's not so bad once you figure out the system," Josh said. "And if you ever need help with anything, Derek's your guy. He helped me navigate my first year here when I transferred from Oak Park." The conversation flowed naturally, covering everything from classes to music to the upcoming school basketball game. Ethan mostly listened, absorbing the normal teenage concerns and interests, feeling something like normalcy settle over him. His phone buzzed around 1 p.m., a text from Marcus. "How's it going? You surviving?" Ethan smiled and typed back, "Better than surviving. It's actually okay. Thanks for checking." Marcus's response was immediate. "Proud of you, kid. See you at 3:15 for pickup." The afternoon classes passed similarly to the morning, some easier, some challenging, but all manageable. By the time the final bell rang at 3:10, Ethan was exhausted, but in a good way. The mental and emotional energy required to navigate a full school day had drained him, but he'd done it. He'd survived his first day back. Derek walked him to the main entrance where Marcus's truck was already waiting. "Same time tomorrow?" Derek asked. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "And thanks for everything today, for making it easier." "No problem, man. That's what we do here. Take care." Marcus could tell immediately that the day had gone well by the way Ethan climbed into the truck. tired but not defeated, thoughtful but not anxious. "So?" Marcus asked as they pulled out of the parking lot. "It was good," Ethan said, and there was wonder in his voice. "Like really good. Mrs. Patterson's English class was amazing. Derek's friend group is cool. The food wasn't terrible. And I didn't have any major disasters." "That's fantastic, Ethan. I'm so proud of you." They stopped at the grocery store on the way home, picking up ingredients for the lasagna Marcus had promised. In the store, something small but significant happened. Ethan pushed the cart while Marcus selected items, and a woman passing by smiled at them, clearly thinking they were father and son. Neither Ethan nor Marcus corrected her, and after she passed, they shared a look of mutual understanding. They were building something here, a relationship that didn't fit neat categories, but mattered nonetheless. At home, Marcus taught Ethan how to make lasagna from scratch, browning the meat, layering the noodles and cheese and sauce, the methodical construction of a complete meal. They worked side by side in the kitchen, falling into an easy rhythm. "My mom used to make lasagna," Ethan said quietly, carefully spreading ricotta cheese. "Not from scratch like this. It was the frozen kind, but it was my favorite. She'd save up to buy it for my birthday." "Tell me about her," Marcus said gently, recognizing the need behind the statement. And Ethan did. While they cooked, he talked about his mother, not the addicted woman struggling with demons, but the person beneath that. The mother who'd read to him every night even when she was exhausted, who'd taught him to ride a bike in a parking lot behind their apartment building, who'd fought her addiction multiple times, failing but always trying again because she loved her son. "She tried so hard," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "People think addicts don't care, but that's not true. She cared so much. She just couldn't win. The drugs were stronger." "That doesn't make her a bad person," Marcus said firmly. "It makes her someone who was sick and needed help she couldn't get. And Ethan, the fact that you're here, that you survived, that you're trying to build a better life, that's her legacy. That's her love living on in you." Ethan wiped at his eyes with his sleeve, then nodded. "I want to make her proud. I want to be the person she hoped I'd become." "You already are," Marcus assured him. "You already are." The lasagna went into the oven, filling the house with the rich smell of cooking tomatoes and cheese. While it baked, they sat at the kitchen table, and Ethan pulled out homework from his backpack, a worksheet for math and a reading assignment for English. Marcus helped where he could, though he readily admitted math wasn't his strongest subject. "That's what the tutors are for," he said, when Ethan got frustrated with a particularly difficult algebra problem. "You meet with your tutor tomorrow, right?" "Yeah, at 4 p.m. in the library." "Good, they'll help you figure this stuff out." Over dinner, the lasagna had turned out perfectly. They talked more about Ethan's day, about the teachers and students he'd met, about the routine he'd need to establish. Marcus shared stories from his own high school experience, making Ethan laugh with tales of teenage misadventures and narrow escapes from detention. "You were kind of a troublemaker, huh?" Ethan said, grinning. "I had my moments," Marcus admitted. "Nothing serious, mostly just pushing boundaries to see where they were. Typical angry foster kid stuff. But I also played football, which gave me somewhere to channel that energy. You should think about joining something, a club, a sport, whatever interests you." "I don't know," Ethan said uncertainly. "I'm not really good at anything like that." "You won't know unless you try. Think about it. There's no rush, but having activities, having connection to the school beyond just classes, it helps. It makes it feel more like your place." That evening, while Ethan worked on his homework, Marcus made calls. He checked in with James about the guardianship progress. Everything was moving smoothly. He touched base with Carlos about the shop. He confirmed Ethan's first counseling appointment for Thursday afternoon. Later, as they were settling in for the night, Marcus knocked on Ethan's door. The boy was at his desk, working through his English reading. "How you feeling?" Marcus asked. "Really?" Ethan closed his book and turned to face Marcus. "Scared," he admitted, "but also hopeful." Like maybe this could actually work. Maybe I could actually have a normal life. It will work, Marcus said confidently. As long as we both keep showing up, keep trying, keep communicating. This isn't going to be perfect. We'll have bad days. We'll probably argue about something eventually. But Ethan, we're in this together. You're not alone anymore. I know, Ethan said softly. And I'm grateful. Every day, I'm grateful. Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. Me too, kid. Me too. Over the next few weeks, a routine solidified. Ethan went to school each day, gradually becoming more comfortable with the environment. His friendship with Derek deepened, and through Derek, he built connections with other students. His grades were mixed. Excellent in English and history, struggling but improving in math with his tutor's help. He worked at Iron Horse Garage 3 afternoons a week and Saturdays, learning the trade under Carlos's patient instruction. His hands grew calloused and skilled. He learned to diagnose problems by sound, to feel when something was wrong in an engine's rhythm, to take pride in work well done. The counseling sessions with Dr. Jennifer Morris were difficult at first. Ethan resisted talking about his trauma, his time on the streets, his mother's death. But Dr. Morris was patient and skilled, creating a safe space for Ethan to slowly unpack his experiences. Healing isn't linear, she told him during their 4th session. Some days will be harder than others. Some things will trigger memories or feelings you thought you'd dealt with. That's normal. The key is having support and healthy coping mechanisms. At home, the relationship between Ethan and Marcus continued to deepen. They developed their own language, their own jokes, their own ways of being together. Marcus taught Ethan to ride a motorcycle, starting with the basics in an empty parking lot, building up to short rides through the neighborhood. Ethan taught Marcus about current music and helped him update his painfully outdated phone. There were difficult moments, too. 3 weeks in, Ethan had a nightmare that woke Marcus at 2 a.m., the boy screaming about someone chasing him, about being trapped. Marcus sat with him until dawn, just being present, not trying to fix anything, just being there. Another time, Ethan got into a verbal altercation with a kid at school who'd made a comment about charity cases. Marcus had to talk Ethan down from his anger, helping him understand that other people's ignorance wasn't worth his emotional energy. People will judge, Marcus said. People will assume they know your story, but their opinions don't define you. Only you define you. Thanksgiving approached, and Marcus made a decision. He invited Ethan's new friends from school, Derek, Maya, Josh, and Aisha, over for dinner. He also invited Carlos and his grandmother, James and his partner, Ruby from the diner, and Joe from the corner store. The house filled with laughter and conversation, with the smell of turkey and pie, with the warmth of people who cared. Ethan sat at the crowded table, looking around at these people who'd become his community, his support system, his found family. When Marcus asked everyone to share what they were grateful for, Ethan felt tears well up. "I'm grateful for second chances," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion. "I'm grateful for people who see potential instead of problems. I'm grateful for everyone in this room. And I'm especially grateful for Marcus, who turned what should have been the worst day of my life into the beginning of the best." There wasn't a dry eye at the table. As winter deepened and Christmas approached, Marcus noticed Ethan becoming more settled, more confident. The haunted look was fading from his eyes, replaced by something brighter. He laughed more easily. He talked about future plans, maybe community college after graduation, maybe taking over the shop someday. He had hope again. On Christmas morning, Marcus gave Ethan a gift that made the boy cry, a leather journal with Ethan's initials embossed on the cover, and inside the first page, a note from Marcus, "For writing your next chapter, the one where you're the hero of your own story. Love, Marcus." Ethan gave Marcus a framed photograph he'd had taken at school, the two of them standing by Marcus's motorcycle, both grinning at the camera. On the back, Ethan had written, "To the man who saved my life by believing in it. Thank you for being my family. Love, Ethan." They spent Christmas Day quietly at home, watching movies and eating too much food, just being together. It was simple and perfect. In January, the guardianship became official. Judge Elizabeth Hardaway, a woman known for her fairness and compassion, reviewed the case thoroughly before making her decision. "Mr. Chen," she said from the bench, "you've demonstrated remarkable commitment to Ethan's welfare. The reports from his school, his counselor, and the social workers are all exemplary. Ethan, do you understand what permanent guardianship means?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ethan said clearly. "It means Marcus will be my legal guardian until I turn 18. It means I have a home and a family." "And is this what you want?" "More than anything," Ethan replied, his voice strong. Judge Hardaway smiled. "Then I'm pleased to grant this guardianship. Mr. Chen, you're now Ethan's legal guardian." "Congratulations to you both." Outside the courthouse, Marcus and Ethan stood in the winter sunshine, the paperwork making their relationship official clutched in Marcus's hand. "We did it," Ethan said, wonder in his voice. "Yeah, we did," Marcus agreed. "You're officially stuck with me now, kid." "Good," Ethan said, and hugged Marcus tightly. "That's exactly where I want to be." The months that followed brought continued growth and healing for both of them. Ethan's grades improved steadily. He joined the school's mechanics club, where his knowledge from working at Iron Horse made him a valuable member. He even started dating a girl from his history class, navigating the awkward, exciting world of teenage romance with Marcus's bemused guidance. Marcus found himself coming alive again in ways he hadn't since Sarah's death. Having someone to care for, someone who needed him, had given his life renewed purpose and meaning. He still missed Sarah terribly. That would never fully go away, but he could feel her approval in the work he was doing with Ethan. One evening in early spring, about 6 months after that first encounter at Joe's corner store, they sat on the back porch, watching the sun set. The oak tree was beginning to bud, promising new leaves and growth. Ethan was doing homework while Marcus tinkered with a small engine part. "Marcus," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Yeah? I was thinking about that day, when I tried to steal your wallet. What made you decide to help me instead of just calling the cops?" Marcus set down his tools and considered the question seriously. "Honestly, I saw myself in you. Not the same circumstances exactly, but the same desperation, the same fear, the same belief that the world had written you off. And I remembered how it felt when someone decided I was worth saving. I wanted to pass that forward." "I'm glad you did," Ethan said softly. "I don't know where I'd be now if you hadn't. Probably dead or in jail or—" "But you're not," Marcus interrupted gently. "You're here. You're safe. You're building a future. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a while longer, each lost in thought. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "I want to do what you did for me. Someday, when I'm older and more stable, I want to help kids who are where I was. I want to be someone's Marcus." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. "That's a beautiful goal, Ethan, and I have no doubt you'll achieve it. You've got so much to offer. Compassion born from understanding, strength born from survival, hope born from experience. You'll make a real difference." "We'll make a difference," Ethan corrected. "Together." "Together," Marcus agreed. As darkness fell and stars began to emerge in the Detroit sky, they remained on the porch, two people whose lives had intersected by chance and been forever changed by choice. A man who'd found purpose in helping someone who needed it. A boy who'd found hope in someone who believed in him. Their story wasn't one of magical transformation or easy fixes. It was messier than that, more complex, more real. There were still hard days ahead, nightmares to work through, challenges to overcome, grief to process. But they would face those challenges together, as family, because that's what they'd become. Not through blood, but through choice. Not through obligation, but through love. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. In the grand scheme of things, it had started with such a small moment. a desperate boy trying to steal a wallet from a stranger. But that moment had rippled outward, changing everything. It had reminded Marcus that healing comes through connection, that purpose comes through service, that love comes in unexpected forms. And it had shown Ethan that his story wasn't over, that second chances exist, that people can surprise you with their capacity for compassion. As they finally headed inside, Marcus's hand on Ethan's shoulder, in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting, neither of them could have known how far they'd come in such a short time. From that October afternoon at Joe's Corner store to this spring evening, they'd built something meaningful from the broken pieces of their pasts. A thief and a biker had become a son and a father. An ending had become a beginning. Desperation had transformed into hope. And that, in the end, was the real story. Not the dramatic moment of crisis, but the quiet, persistent choice to show up for each other every day, to care when it would be easier not to believe in possibility when reality argued otherwise, to build bridges instead of walls. In doing so, they'd both found what they needed. Marcus had found purpose after loss, and Ethan had found safety after chaos. Together they'd built a home, not just of walls and rooms, but of trust and care and commitment. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. There would be graduations and celebrations, challenges and setbacks, growth and change. But whatever came next, they would face it together, and that made all the difference. As Ethan turned out his light that night, safe in his room with the motorcycle poster on the wall and clean clothes in his dresser, he thought about that October day when desperation had driven him to theft. He thought about Marcus's wallet in his trembling hands, about the terror he'd felt when their eyes met, and he thought about how that single moment of crisis had led to this: a home, a family, a future. He fell asleep with a smile on his face, no longer haunted by what he'd lost, but hopeful about what he'd found. In his own room, Marcus looked at Sarah's picture on his nightstand. "I hope you're proud," he whispered to her memory. "I hope this is what you would have wanted. I hope I'm doing right by him." And though Sarah couldn't answer, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to be doing. Not just for Ethan, but for himself too. They'd saved each other, really. Two broken people finding wholeness through connection. Two separate stories merging into one shared narrative of healing and hope. And isn't that what family is in the end? Not the family you're born into, but the family you choose. The people who show up when you need them. The ones who believe in you when you can't believe in yourself. The ones who turn your worst moments into new beginnings. Marcus and Ethan had found that in each other. And in doing so, they'd discovered that sometimes the most profound changes come not from grand gestures, but from simple acts of compassion, from seeing someone, really seeing them, and deciding their life matters, from choosing every single day to care.